As some of you may know, I have indicated already in a video here and there, but never in a very systematic fashion. I may have mentioned this on my Patreon as well, but that in all likelihood, my next book will not be a book that is entirely focused on the INFJ personality. I have two options. Sure, if you guys have feedback to share with me about what you would be more excited to read, what you think it would make the most impact, please by all means let me know, because I am in the dark in that respect. Oh, by the way, look, Game of Thrones. So the two ideas that I have in mind, right, are one, that's the one I've mentioned more often, is a book that is entirely focused on introverted intuition. And like I've said before, I am not afraid that there won't be enough material to write a book entirely on introverted intuition. It's like such a deep, rich, complex function which really regulates the coloring and aspectuality of the anti-dominant experience of reality and themselves, that there's lots to be said, and I think a lot of people could benefit from understanding that better. The other option, which currently is my second option, it's not my preferred option, but it is an option that I am considering, is an even more general book on all the traditionally described MBTI types seen through the lens of Jungian existentialism. So, as you may or may not know, Jungian existentialism is what I describe, it's what I call my approach to typology, to types. Jungian because it is informed fundamentally by Jungian concepts, psychoanalysis. Existentialism because it is also very much significantly influenced by the existential approach to philosophy and psychology. All right. So what this means concretely is that I am not looking at I'm not looking at type through the lens of sort of complex, abstract top-down systems, but looking primarily at the lived experience of a particular person through the prism of their type, and trying to see what we can at least tentatively derive as traits that corroborate being of that type. This is a process of continual updating and update, not only because theories in themselves can always be improved upon, but you get more and more empirical contributions from your own observation and other people's testimonies, and also because the world itself changes, the environment changes. The existential part of Jungian existentialism is to a great extent, about how we never understand, like, say, an INFJ just as an abstract entity, but as an INFJ in context, an INFJ that lives operates in a life world, like I sometimes like to say. So we always have to take into account the interaction between the INFJ and what is outside the INFJ, other people, economic context, like where they live, and so forth. So Jungian existentialism has something to say about all the types. Of course, it comes easier for me to talk about the INFJ personality because I've spent lots of time observing the INFJ, both subjectively, that is myself, and by looking at other people, like intersubjectively. I just think that if I were to look at the 16 types, there's two risks here. Either it would be just too ambitious because like each type would require so much time to investigate, delve into, that the book would end up being like 1,000 pages or 1,200 pages, would take forever to write, would be expensive to produce, and it might be hard to break even in terms of sales, and who wants to read a book that's that long? Now, the other approach within that overarching strategy, which is not ideal, is to say, well, I will avoid having to write a very, very long book, a very, very long work of Jungian existentialism, looking at all the types, by focusing on the core features of Jungian existentialism, just providing a general theory of Jungian existentialism that then people can use to apply to whatever type they like of the 16 types. On paper, it looks like it's potentially an interesting endeavor. But what I don't like about that is that there's like a very, very significant risk involved, which is to fall almost straight away into the finite attitude, the restrictive attitude to type, you know, which I warn against a lot in my latest book, The Infinite Soul, okay? Which is a book on the INFJ, but the first chapter is not just about the INFJ. It is about typology and approach to typology, and the finite attitude to type is to just provide this abstract description that says this type has that, this, that, and the other characteristic, and that's it, boxed in. We can sort of derive all the types from that. And that's usually what will happen if you try to provide like this kind of systematic theory. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think it yields deep truths about type, you see. So for now, I'm favoring a book on introverted intuition. I think that it will be really interesting to look at the function in itself, the history of how the function has been perceived, how it's been displayed in the life of INFJs and INTJs, and the existential analysis of the NI function, including in terms of categories like the oceanic experience that I've been talking about a little bit in videos recently, all the concepts that have to do with alienation, with severance, with distance, with disembodiment, with prescience, with haziness, again, enriched by this opposition between the NI world and its oceanic texture and the external world and its regimented texture. And what are the challenges for NI dominance in particular? Because like I've said before, there's a huge difference between being an NI dominant and being not an NI dominant. There's more of a difference between being an NI dominant and an NI auxiliary than there is between being an NI auxiliary and an NI tertiary. Because between an NI dominant and a non-NI dominant, there's a different world. We don't exactly live in the same world. That's the existential aspect mixing with, if you like, the influence of a particular mental makeup. It's like we possess the NI function. One way of saying I am an NI dominant is saying I live in this kind of world with this kind of texture. This is the NI world, and that's how I can interact with external reality. So I think there's plenty to say. There's ways that this book could appeal a lot to INTJs as well as INFJs. And since NI is a function that interests everyone, potentially other types as well, people that identify with other types will be interested in that. It's not a book that I'm going to be working on anytime soon, partly because, you know, we're in January. The Infinite Soul has only been out for 7 or 8 months. So I still want it to be front and center. But perhaps I start at least working on it the second half of this year, and we'll see if maybe in the course of 2026 might see a release, okay? But again, between these two approaches, which one prima facie sounds more exciting to you? Please let me know, because this is also something that I care about, knowing what my audience is more interested in. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video, guys. So again, this book I've mentioned a couple of times already, The Infinite Soul, is a book on the INFJ. It's a book on NI. It's a book on how the INFJ finds the world hostile, the modern world hostile in many ways, and yet the only way to thrive in this world, I believe, is to fully embrace your INFJ authenticity. And this book explores how you can do that. Find fulfillment, find meaning and purpose as an INFJ in this world today. Get this book as well as this other book, which is my first book. Check the reviews of the two books, of course, to get an idea. The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality, which is the most in-depth look at the mind and consciousness of the INFJ that you will find online. Enough said. What's it like to be an INFJ? What's it like to think like an INFJ? What's it like to experience the world like an INFJ? If you want to know more, get the Ecstatic Soul. And as usual, guys, the lifeblood of my channel is my Patreon page. I'm ever dependent on your kind and generous donations. So please consider supporting me at the link below on Patreon. It's not a lot to be a subscriber, but it contributes massively to helping me keep going with these daily videos. You get access to bonus content every 2 weeks, an in-depth video about a particular topic. You get access to me, to the community. We interact, suggest ideas, contributions, innovations, and so forth. So if you're excited by the prospect and would like to support me, the link is below. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.